I thought I was living a perfect love story until the day I saw my wife in another man's arms on Instagram. That post destroyed 4 years of marriage in a single second. It wasn't a mistake. It was a double life, carefully hidden. I still remember that autumn morning in New York, the pale sky above the rooftops, the coffee growing cold on the counter, and the message that changed my life. Family only, no plus ones. That's what Olivia, my wife, had written about her cousin's wedding. I read those words 3 times, hoping they would mean something else. But no, I was simply excluded. We'd been married for 4 years. 4 years of laughter, plans, quiet mornings watching taxis from our apartment window. Yet that message felt like a slap. I replied calmly, just a no problem I didn't believe for a second. She left the apartment before sunrise, suitcase rolling on the floor, her perfume lingering in the air long after the door closed. I pretended to be asleep. I couldn't face her. The wedding was in Vermont, at one of those picture-perfect inns with flowers and wooden beams. Olivia had shown me the invitation weeks earlier, smiling. "Sophie has such good taste," she'd said, tracing the gold letters with her finger. I had nodded, pretending to be happy for her, but something in her tone had already made me uneasy, a sparkle of excitement that didn't sound innocent. I had imagined that wedding differently. Me beside her, dressed in my best suit, dancing, laughing, being part of her family. But that dream vanished with a simple text. She'd told me about the family-only rule while chopping vegetables, as if it meant nothing. "You know how they are," she'd said, her knife hitting the board rhythmically. "No plus ones. It's about space or budget." The way she said it was rehearsed. That morning, after she left, the silence felt heavier than usual. I sat by the window with cold coffee, watching the city come alive. A dog barked outside. A siren screamed somewhere downtown. Life went on as if nothing had changed, except everything had. I wasn't angry yet, just hurt in that quiet, invisible way you feel when the person you love decides you don't quite belong. I spent the day cleaning, fixing small things, doing anything not to think. That evening, I ordered Thai food, our favorite, but eating alone made the apartment feel emptier. Later, her message came. "The wedding was beautiful, so tired. Love you." I wrote back, "Glad you had fun." Then I sat in the dark, staring at my phone, waiting for a reply that never came. The next morning, sunlight forced me awake. My phone buzzed with notifications, emails, ads, useless reminders, and then, on top of all that, a new one. Sophie has posted wedding photos. My finger hovered before tapping, and then I saw her, Olivia, my wife, dancing with another man. The photo looked perfect. Her in a burgundy dress I'd never seen, smiling, her hand resting on the shoulder of a man I didn't know. The caption read, "Most beautiful couple at the wedding." My breath froze. I swiped to the next picture. Him whispering in her ear, her wearing his jacket, him kissing her temple. In the comments, her mother had written, "Finally, a son-in-law I can be proud of." I set the phone down gently as if it might explode. My heart pounded so fast it hurt. I wanted to believe there was another explanation, a cousin, a friend, anything. But deep down, I already knew. The truth was crawling through me, slow and cold. I sat still for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I reopened Instagram, found the tagged name, Ethan Bradford. His profile was public. His feed was a museum of betrayal, romantic dinners, weekend getaways, sunsets, and laughter, all featuring her, my wife. One photo shattered me completely. Dinner at Lucia's, that fancy Brooklyn restaurant with a 3-month waiting list. the date, my birthday. The caption read, "Nothing better than celebrating my birthday with the woman who makes every day brighter." My birthday. The same night she told me she had food poisoning. I remembered it vividly, the call, her weak voice, her apologies. I'd brought her soup and found the apartment empty. She'd texted, "At Mom's, don't want you to catch this bug. Love you." And now here she was, in a black dress, toasting with another man. My stomach twisted. Everything I thought I knew had just collapsed. I kept scrolling, unable to stop. 3 years of photos, 3 years of lies carefully framed in perfect lighting, trips she'd said were for work, retreats she claimed were solo, even Christmas, her in a Santa hat, his arm around her, in front of a tree that wasn't ours. Each picture was another knife, slow and deliberate. That's when I understood. It hadn't just happened. It had been built, nurtured, chosen. I'd believed in our love like it was unbreakable truth. I was wrong. My hands trembled, but my mind grew strangely calm. I created a folder on my phone, titled Wedding Photos. Inside, I began saving every single piece of evidence, every lie, every smile, every illusion. When I was done, there were over 200 images, 200 fragments of a puzzle I hadn't known existed. I looked around our apartment, the bookshelf I built, our wedding frame, the life we had created. Suddenly, none of it looked familiar. None of it looked mine. That evening, when she came home, everything was ready. The apartment was spotless, a bottle of wine open, her favorite cheese waiting. I greeted her with a smile. She hugged me, told me she'd missed me, told me about the wedding, laughing softly. I listened, calm, silent, watching her. She showed me the photos, carefully cropped, neatly edited. I recognized the same dress, the same lights, the same setting, but Ethan was gone. Cut out like a bad memory. I smiled, pretending I hadn't noticed. "You look beautiful," I said. She laughed, kissed me, and I knew then I wasn't living a love story anymore. I was living inside a lie. That night, while she slept beside me, I started writing. Not a letter. A plan. This wouldn't be anger or revenge. It would be clarity. Cold, precise, undeniable. She thought she'd fooled me forever, but I was already awake, and soon, very soon, she would be too. The next morning, I left the apartment before her, as usual. The subway roared beneath Manhattan. People rushed past with their coffee cups, unaware that their lives could collapse with a single post. I was one of them, invisible in the crowd, but inside, something had shifted. I wasn't the naive husband anymore. I was the observer. At the office, I said nothing. I smiled, answered emails, attended meetings. But whenever I had a minute, I went back to the evidence. Every photo of Ethan and Olivia told a parallel story, a dinner, a weekend, a kiss stolen under another sky. 3 years of a secret life. 3 years of humiliation disguised as routine. That evening, I made a decision. If she could lie so easily, then so could I, but with purpose. I wouldn't scream or confront her yet. I would understand everything. I would learn how deep the deception went. And when the time came, I'd strike where it hurt the most, the truth. I started with our bank accounts. We had a joint account, and Olivia handled most payments. With a few clicks, I found strange expenses, restaurants we'd never visited, hotels in Boston, Seattle, Los Angeles, trips she'd called work conferences that matched Ethan's photos perfectly. Every transaction was a receipt for another lie. Then I opened her laptop. Her password, the name of our dog, the one that died 2 years ago, irony at its finest. In her emails, I found hotel confirmations, flight bookings, and deleted photos still stored in the cloud. In a hidden folder named Work, there were messages from Ethan, tender words, private jokes, "I love you," written from the same couch where I once kissed her goodnight. My heart pounded as I kept digging. In her phone contacts, one name stood out: Parker, ordinary, harmless. But that night, while she was in the shower, I saw a message pop up on the screen. "This weekend was perfect. You're amazing. E. E for Ethan." She had disguised him with a fake name. I stood there, phone in hand, the sound of running water in the background, my breath shallow. If I opened that bathroom door, everything would explode. But I wasn't ready yet. Not until I understood it all. I put the phone back exactly where she'd left it. When she came out wrapped in a towel, smiling, I pretended nothing was wrong. We had dinner together, even laughed a little. I talked about projects, plans, nothing important. She thought everything was fine. She didn't realize I was studying her, not as my wife, but as a mystery to solve, a puzzle whose pieces I now held. Over the next few days, I prepared everything. I downloaded bank statements, saved every conversation, noted every travel date. Then I met with a lawyer, not to file for divorce, not yet. I just wanted to know, to understand what the law said about betrayal when it becomes a pattern, about trust when it turns into a weapon. When I left the lawyer's office, for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of power. I had the facts. I had the truth. Soon, I'd have control. She thought she was safe behind her lies, but the ground beneath her was already breaking. On Wednesday night, I suggested a surprise dinner. "For us," I said. She accepted with that familiar smile, the one she used when she wanted to look innocent. I booked a table at Lucia's, the same restaurant where she had celebrated another man's birthday on the night of mine. When she walked in, wearing a light dress, I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. "Here," she whispered. I smiled. "You like this place, don't you?" She forced a laugh. "It's expensive, but romantic." "Romantic, yes, for those with nothing to hide." We dined like a normal couple, talked about work, travel, friends. She played her role perfectly. But every word, every gesture felt hollow. Her eyes sparkled, but it wasn't love anymore. It was fear, fear of being caught. And I savored that silence where truth was hiding behind her smile. At the end of the meal, I took her hand. "You know," I said softly, "I've been thinking, what if we renewed our vows? Just you and me, a fresh start." Her eyes widened, confusion flashing for a second before she smiled again. "That's such a sweet idea," she said hesitantly. "But with work being so crazy right now..." I nodded. Her lie was effortless. That told me everything I needed to know. Back home, she locked herself in the bathroom. I turned on the TV and pretended to watch a documentary about art thieves. The narrator said, "The best liars are those who believe their own stories." I couldn't help but smile. Olivia could have been the star of that episode. When she came out, I wished her good night. She nestled against me as if nothing had changed. Her breathing soon became slow, steady. I lay awake, eyes open, and reached for my phone. It was time. I started sending the messages I had written for days. One to Sophie, her cousin. "Thanks for your beautiful wedding. I now understand what family only really meant." Photos attached. Another to Susan, her mother. "You finally got the son-in-law you can be proud of. Maybe you should reconsider your standards." And one last to Ethan Bradford. "Hi, Ethan. This is Olivia's husband. We need to talk." I got up, took a long, hot shower. The water drowned out the sound of my phone buzzing. Notifications, replies, chaos. It had begun. I felt my pulse steady for the first time in days. For the first time, I wasn't the victim. I was the one holding the truth. The next morning, she was sitting on the bed, pale, phone in hand. "What did you do?" she whispered. I pretended not to understand. "What do you mean?" She showed me her screen, messages from family, friends, Ethan. Everyone knew. Everyone. "You contacted them," she screamed. I looked at her calmly. "I just told the truth. Someone had to." She started crying, shaking. "It's not what you think." "Then explain," I said. "It wasn't planned. I never wanted to hurt you." 3 years? I asked quietly. "You call that an accident?" She lowered her eyes, unable to speak. And for the first time I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just a vast, hollow calm, like the silence after a storm. Her phone rang. She jumped. The name on the screen. Ethan Bradford. I grabbed it before she could. "Hello?" I said, my voice steady. A pause. "Is this Olivia's husband?" "Yes, and you must be Ethan." "Listen," he stammered. "I think there's a misunderstanding. She told me you were separated." I smiled bitterly. "Of course she did. Let me guess. She also told you I was abusive?" Silence. Then he hung up. When I handed her the phone, she was trembling. "You shouldn't have spoken to him," she muttered. I stared at her for a long time. "No, Olivia," I said quietly. "You're the one who shouldn't have lied to me." That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I took a blanket and lay on the couch, listening to the hum of the city through the window. A taxi horn, a distant siren, the wind against the glass. New York never sleeps, and neither did I. The following days felt like a controlled storm. I scheduled meetings with my lawyer, organized documents, and sent copies of the evidence to key people. Every message I sent sparked small explosions, calls, texts, angry questions. I wasn't acting out of blind revenge. I was ending a double life that had never respected mine. My lawyer, Jennifer, was sharp and calm. "You have a strong case," she said, scrolling through the photos. We discussed options: divorce, settlements, even legal action against Ethan for his part in it. I wanted something simple: public truth and a clean separation. Cold justice felt like the only antidote to the burning humiliation. When Olivia realized I had exposed everything, her family, her friends, Ethan, panic turned to rage, then to begging. At first her calls were furious. Later they were desperate. Promises, tears, apologies. But the balance was gone. 3 years of lies can't be undone with a few hours of regret. News of the affair spread fast. Some friends supported me. Others sided with her, too comfortable believing the prettier version of events. Her family fractured. Sophie texted me a late apology that I read but didn't answer. I had made a choice. No more lies, no more silence. The truth would stand even if it burned. The day the divorce papers were served at her office was surreal. She screamed in the lobby, cried in front of her coworkers, called me cruel. I felt each word, each accusation, echo like the humiliation I'd endured seeing her with him. I hadn't chosen the scandal. She had when she chose deceit. There were no lessons left to learn, only endings. The weeks of negotiation dragged on, precise, sterile. We divided accounts, the apartment, every shared possession. Jennifer advised caution. "Anger can be expensive," she said. I signed each paper without emotion. My past dissolved into ink and legal stamps. It was over officially. What I felt afterward wasn't the satisfaction I'd imagined. It was a long, quiet exhale. The anger had burned out, leaving only exhaustion and a strange curiosity. What would I do with a life finally free of lies? The question for once felt possible to answer. The first nights alone in the apartment felt oddly light. I threw away photos, donated old things, rearranged furniture. I repainted the walls, bought new coffee mugs, a plant. Every small gesture was liberating, rebuilding a space that belonged only to me. I started therapy, a place where resentment turned into words. Dr. Martinez helped me name what I hadn't dared to say. I hadn't been stupid. I'd been trusting. There's a difference, she said. Trust is healthy. What she did with it wasn't. Saying it aloud helped me forgive myself for believing. Work became my refuge again. Projects, late hours, focus, things I could control. My colleagues knew about the divorce but never pried, which I appreciated. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted purpose. I was no longer working to prove something to Olivia. I was working for me. Weeks later, Sophie, her cousin, reached out. Her message was awkward but genuine. She wanted to apologize for the wedding, the caption, the silence. We met at a cafe near Union Square. She looked nervous and sincere. I accepted her apology quietly. I had no more revenge to give, only closure. Sophie admitted what I'd suspected, that Olivia had manipulated everyone's perception, crafting a version of the truth that suited her. Hearing it didn't heal the wound, but it explained its depth. Olivia hadn't just betrayed me, she'd rewritten reality. Sophie's honesty didn't erase the pain, but it made it less lonely. Months after the divorce, Olivia called me again. Sometimes she begged, sometimes she explained, sometimes she just cried. Once, she told me she was in therapy, that she and Ethan had broken up, that she regretted everything. I listened but made no promises. Remorse doesn't erase the years stolen. One day, I received a message from another woman, Sophie, but not the cousin, Ethan's ex. She sent me screenshots showing the same pattern, married women, same charm, same lies. Seeing his habits laid bare didn't comfort me, but it gave shape to the chaos. I wasn't alone in this web of deception. Life moved forward, slower but lighter. I began running again through Central Park at dawn, something I'd stopped doing because Olivia found it boring. The rhythm of my steps became therapy. The city woke up around me, and I realized I could too. Each breath was freedom. Then, almost by accident, I met Claire. She was a teacher, passionate about her students, with a quiet humor and kind eyes. We started with coffee, then dinner. No rush, no expectations. Just two people sharing moments without pretending. For the first time in years, honesty felt natural. With Claire, trust returned slowly. We talked about books, music, travel, things that had no shadow attached. When she asked about my past, I told her everything. No filters, no edits. She listened, then said, "You survived. You chose truth." Her words didn't fix the past, but they reframed it. Months later, we went away for a weekend by the Hudson River. Sitting in front of the water, she took my hand. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. I looked at her, then at the river, and realized I was. "Yes," I said, "not to forget, but to move on." The story still floated online here and there, whispers, screenshots, old gossip, but they no longer hurt. They were just waves fading into distance. I'd learned something essential. Peace isn't about silence. It's about indifference to the noise. A year after the divorce, Sophie, the cousin, messaged again. She wanted to meet to close the chapter properly. I agreed. We talked about family, guilt, the lies people tell to protect what's comfortable. Before leaving, she handed me a small card. For what's left to build. I smiled. I was already building. Olivia called one last time, long after everything was over. This time her voice wasn't defensive. It was broken. She said she was sorry, that Ethan had left, that she'd ruined her life. I listened. I didn't hate her anymore. But forgiveness isn't a gift you hand out. It's something time earns. Freedom, I learned, isn't just the absence of someone. It's the return to yourself. I learned to cherish my solitude, to build quiet mornings, to call my mother just to hear her voice. The world wasn't smaller without Olivia. It was bigger, wider, honest. Sometimes memories came back, a scent, a song, a glimpse of the past. They no longer hurt. They were reminders of how far I'd come. Pain had turned into proof that I could endure, learn, and still choose kindness. Then one afternoon, laughing with Claire in a park, I realized I hadn't faked that laughter. It was light, pure. She looked at me, curious, and I understood. I was no longer defined by betrayal. I was defined by what I chose after it. 2 years after discovering the photos, I returned to the cafe where I had first met Sophie after everything fell apart. The same seat, the same smell of roasted coffee. The owner recognized me and smiled. For the first time, I felt complete. The past was just that. Past. One evening, I found the last wedding photo I had kept in a box. I slipped it into an envelope, wrote a few words, for what was, and for what won't be again, and dropped it in a charity box. I didn't want to burn the past. I wanted it to help someone else somehow. Today I wake up lighter. I've learned that trust isn't weakness. It's a choice you make knowing it might break. I've learned that betrayal doesn't define you, what you do after it does. And if my story left scars, it also gave me a compass, to live slowly, truthfully, bravely, and to know that even after the hardest fall you can still rise.